The zombie T-Rex is back, undid swag with that old school rap. Cause it's Curtis Blow with that nerdist flow, getting pterodactyl fly on the track. 4 records deep, 5 EPs, 1 mixtape, cause you can't kill me. Poison when I spit it, Komodo Dragon, nerdcore royalty, Kimono Dragon. Sesco daily and loquaciousness, no rapper ever born did a rhyme like this. MC Lars with a rhythmic alacrity, oratory skills causing mad catastrophe. The whole crew sick, like Kubrick, got your eyes wide shut for this apocalypse. Let's face it, I'm an awesome rapper, post-punk laptop velociraptor. No, I won't dumb it down for the mainstream fan, cause the mainstream fan has lame taste, man. Yeah, I said it, and I'm flying over hurdles, keep it underground like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. See a funny thing happen on my way to the stage. Waylaid by a stegosaurus stacking on my leg. When I made my escape, it was way too late. Got that T-virus strain all up in my veins. Bringing pain like the Necronomicon. Iguanagon loose up at Comic-Con. Tearing up your lawn like a Moplodon. Take away your girl like I was Donkey Kong. Jurassic Park this van in your city every time I rock a show. Cause the fans all bounce when I light up the room with that pyroclastic flow. Yo! No mercy, no surrender. Zombie T-Rex, I'm killing it forever. No mercy, no surrender. Zombie T-Rex, I'm killing it forever. No mercy, no surrender. Zombie T-Rex, I'm killing it forever. No mercy, no surrender. Zombie T-Rex, I'm killing it forever. Cause I make that smart music, that hard DIY from the heart music, that Lars he came to straight rocket music, that burning down your local hot topic music, that KRS-One on my album music, that of course you know I've read up on Malcolm music, that PMA all day music, that guy who gave you K-Flay music, that R.I.P. Pat Wood music, that only wanna do a bit of good music, that got here on my own music, that hey it's Weird Al on my phone music, that lit hop Edgar Allan Poe music, that show your English teacher how to flow music, that TED Talk read a book music, that look at Sister Crack on the hook music, like no mercy, no surrender. Zombie T-Rex, I'm killing it forever. Zombie T-Rex. No mercy, no surrender. Zombie T-Rex, I'm killing it forever. Zombie T-Rex. No mercy, no surrender. Zombie T-Rex, I'm killing it forever. Zombie T-Rex. No mercy, no surrender. Zombie T-Rex, I'm killing it forever.
Our top story tonight, a herd of zombie dinosaurs is loose in San Francisco, causing more damage and destruction than the city has ever seen. We go now live to the Golden Gate Bridge, where a zombie Tyrannosaurus Rex is currently ripping apart the suspension cables and pushing cars into the bay. Coming up after the break, San Francisco has already seen its local coffee markets impacted by these zombie dinosaurs, what these developments mean for your organic Arabica, and then enterprising young people are bringing gentrification to dinosaur caves and dens. We find the city's best apocalyptic food trucks, and finally an Oxford study.
What is up, guys? What is up? Welcome back to the Woodshed. It is Professor Woodshed here. Is this an advertisement going on? What's going on, guys? Hope you guys are having a fantastic Wednesday. It is a Wednesday. Welcome back to the Woodshed, where we're going to be doing a bit of 16-note variations with new and improved board cam as well. So all kinds of stuff going on with the live lesson. Yeah, let's see how these are. Oh, sounds pretty good today, guys. Feeling pretty good today. The Pretzel Rocks, guys. The Pretzel Rocks. Was that an ad, or was that just like, is that part of the song? That's crazy. That was pretty wild. Anyway, guys, hope you guys have a fantastic one today. Welcome once again to the Woodshed. 16-note variations is on the slate for today. We're going to be doing a lot of stuff in terms of reading. Get that coffee on, guys. Get that coffee on. Hey, what's up, Army? How are you doing? How are you doing? Coffee cheers, ladies and gentlemen. All right. I say we get started. What do you guys say? We got a lesson to be doing here. So let's get started over on the board cam. We're going to be talking about a lot today. Oh, I love how the cam completely screwed up. Well, okay. All right, give me a second, boys, ladies and gentlemen. Let me technical difficulties on the home front. You know what I'm saying? It's one of those kind of things. We are going to prioritize frame rate. We're going to configure video inputs so we can get a little bit better cam properties here. Let's go to hello from the Lurkers Lounge. What's up, Elm? How are you today, man? Hope you're having a fantastic one. Maybe we can take this down. Maybe it's the white balance. What do you guys think? It looks very green. There we go. See, that looks a lot better. There you go. That's all you got to do. I would love it. I would just love it if they would save my settings. That's all I'm going to say. All right, guys. We're going to be jumping into 16-note variations. And 16-note variations is a very, very big thing that we need to make sure that we get a good, capable thing from. Let me boost up my chat just a little bit because I can't read it from across the room. Where are my font settings, please? Looks like it's not in this particular feature. I like how that works. Anyway, we'll try it though. Welcome, Lurkers. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the live lesson of 16-note variations. I'm hoping the board looks a lot better than it did on the last one. I did do a little bit of review. So we did talk about a little bit of how to read music and how to read, notes and how to get all those things together. One of the things that we got into was working through our 16th notes. So we got our 16 notes here. And if we remember, they're composed of 3 different parts. We have our note heads, we have our note stems, and then we have our flags. In this case, it's a grouping of 4 16th notes. Faith Soldier, what's going on, man? How are you doing today? Doing pretty good, man. Doing pretty good. So we're going to be talking about all the different variations that go into the 16th notes because although this is a single beat of 16th notes, and this would be counted as 1, E, and we can have all, some, few, and take all of them out. So we can take out like the 1, we can take out the E, we can take out the and, we can take out the we can take out variations of 2, which is a very big thing as well, and we can take out variations of 3. And what the 16th note variations comes into 14 different patterns, also known as check patterns. That's a very, I'm just going to go PTNS for check patterns. But all these variations will encompass all the things that you need to do in terms of your 16th note variations. So let's jump right into it. The first things first, there is an exercise that goes along as you play through this of check patterns, and it goes as follows. I'm going to write the entire thing out, guys, so you can get a good, actually, I'll tell you what, we're not going to write this. We don't really need that right there. We're going to do our exercise. All right, very good. And as promised, guys, we will be getting into more complex things, as you may know. All right, these are our basic 16th note variations, and this is going to be our check pattern, and I'll explain how this exercise works and how we play it all together. All right, there is first measure, second measure, and then all right, very good. Boop, 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 boo. Making lots of stems, making lots of staffs. It's very good. Boop, 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 boop. All right, excellent. And then a rest. Boop. All right, there is our full check pattern variation. All of these are basically what this is going to be, is this is the exercise of which we play. Now, there are a few rules as we do our 16th note variation when it comes to applying it to drums. One of the big things is sticking. Sticking of it is regardless of what we do for our 16th note variations, we are going to use the proper sticking of, we'll say check pattern sticking is what we refer to this as check pattern sticking. What I mean by that is it's going to be right, left for 1 E and A. If we would take out one of these 16th notes, we also don't use that hand. For instance, if we wouldn't play the and count, we also don't play that right hand. This is as opposed to alternating sticking, which is regardless of the rhythm, you always go right, left, right, 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 left, right, left, right, left, right, left, all the way through. This is called alternating sticking, and this would be what's known as check pattern sticking. Check pattern sticking is good for exercise purposes, and it's very good for just getting the rhythms down, getting your hands flowing, and making all the things work. So let's start talking about our different variations and how they're written. Again, this is our basic group of 4 16th notes, but we're going to be doing into our 3-note variations, And the 3-note variations are basically taking out one of each one of these. So for our first 4 variations, we're going to start with taking out the right hand, and that's going to be as follows. We're going to write a 16th note rest, which is on count 1, and then we're going to write 3 16th notes all together, which is going to be E and Now again, this would be a right hand, but since we don't play that, we're not going to use the right hand, and then it's going to be left, right, left for E and That's the very first variation. Second variation is we're going to take out the E. Now here's where it gets a little bit tricky, because if we remember back to our reading, we have a 16th note, and every note that we read is going to tell us where the next note happens. In this example, we have a 16th note rest on 1, which you think to yourself, okay, 16th note rest takes up a 16th note space, happens on count 1. What is my next 16th note count? In this case, it's going to be E. And for the first example, we have just a whole group of 16th notes, and so that makes it very, very easy. As we start to go through these variations, you're going to see a very common way that all these different 16th note variations are written. All right, so let's talk about this next one. That's our very first pattern of E and Second pattern is going to be taking out the E. So what we're going to be doing is this. I hope I have enough room here. All right, so this is going to be 1 and again, we're skipping the E count on this particular one here, which also means we're going to be taking out a left hand we don't play. We do not play the left hand this time. And for consistency's sake, we'll do that. Now, if you notice, the first thing that we got going on here is basically this. Number 1, let me go ahead and pause that pencil rock so it doesn't interfere with chat. Give me a second, guys. Blink. Very good. If we notice here, we start to get into our variations where we're no longer just using 16th notes. We're now starting to get into the point where we're utilizing 8th notes as well as 16th notes. So we take our same rule of how do we read music, how do we apply these different things to the different parts. Number 1, we look at it and we go, okay, what kind of note do we have on count 1? We have an 8th note. All right, cool. What's an 8th note count? Oh, 8th note counts. That's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Cool. I have an 8th note on 1. What's the next 8th note count after that? In this case, it's going to be the and count. We get to the and count and we say, oh, there's a 16th note there. Now we got to be thinking 16th note counts. We get to the and count and we say 16th note on and. What's the next 16th note count? That takes us to the So far, so good. Not too bad, not too bad, right? Now we get into the next variation where it gets a little bit trickier. And this is a one I want to really sort of highlight in terms of how things are read and how to read the music, how to read the tunes. The next note that we're going to be taking out, if we follow the chain down, is going to be taking out the and count. So in this case, we're going to write it this way. Let me break this down just a little bit. We're going to do that, and we're going to do that. And in this case, this is 1, E, and We're skipping the and count in this case. Now this is a really, really good example of how we start to utilize our different 8th notes. We talked about this briefly too, in terms of syncopation before. But in this example, we have an 8th note count in the middle here. But let's break this down just a little bit because it gets a little tricky. This confuses a lot of folks. Remember the rules that we go down to when it comes down to reading music. We have our note head, we have our stem, and then we have how many flags are attached to each one. Now, if you look at this example here, we go to count 1, but we got to examine it kind of closely because there's a weird looking flag. There's only like a half flag on the very first note. It doesn't go all the way across, it's just kind of halfway in between. But always ask yourself, on this particular stem, how many flags does this have? And if you look at this case, 1 and 2, we have two flags on this one stem, which makes it a 16th note. So if we take a look at our 16th notes and we start thinking, okay, we're on 16th notes now. Okay, cool. That's count 1. It's a 16th note. Takes us to our next 16th note count. That's going to be our E count. All right, very, very good. All right, so we know we have a right. We know we have a left. Now on E, here's where it gets tricky. Yes, you have a completed, connected grouping between this entire beat. However, take a look at the stem itself. And you always have to ask yourself, all right, well, how many flags does that stem have? And if you look at this one, this note, or this first note, this stem does not, or the flag doesn't go all the way to the stem. And this one doesn't go all the way to this one either. So this note in between only has one flag to it. And that one flag means that it's an eighth note, single eighth note. So now we get to that weird question. We go back to reading music. Okay, we have an eighth note. What are our eighth note counts? Okay, that's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Wait a minute, that's not an E. That doesn't fall into one of those counts. So how do we do this? How do we break it down? If we have an eighth note or any kind of note that falls on, we'll say not its natural counts. Quarter notes 1, 2, 3, 4. Eighth notes 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 16th notes 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a. If we have a note, like in this case, an eighth note on an E count, which is not a sixth or not an eighth note count. Thank you very much for the host, Purple Phoenix and Spectronaut. What's going on? How are you doing today? You start to break it down into its smaller parts until you get to the count of what it's going to be, what its natural counts are. So if I remember back to our pie chart that we talked about of like splitting the notes in half or like slicing a piece of the pie. So an eighth note is consistent of 2 16th notes. You don't play 2 notes, but it takes up the space of 2 16th notes. So we can do this. All right, there's an eighth note on E, but we know that an eighth note will break down into 2 16th notes. Okay, so let's start to break it down that way. Okay, since it takes up the space of 2 16th notes, and this one happens on the E count, okay, cool. We have a 16th note on E. That's a 16th note count. So, all right, excellent. Now I can start working this out. 16th note on E moves us forward 1 16th note count to the and then on and we have another 16th note count, and that moves us to the next one, which is an So there we go. We broke the eighth note down into the smaller parts of 16th notes, and we said, all right, cool. Now we know how much space this takes up. And again, it doesn't mean you play 2 notes, it just means it takes up this much space. And again, remember, this note tells us where the next note happens. And that's where it becomes interesting. So we know this takes up 2 16th note counts. That means this eighth note is going to take up the E and the and also means we're going to be skipping the right hand and then back to the left hand on the All right, I hope that makes sense, because that one is, this variation in particular is something that a lot of people have some trouble with. We're also going to get into some other things today too. Okay, that's variation 3. Variation 1, variation 2, variation 3. Now we'll get to variation 4. And if you follow down through the logic here, we took out the first note, we took out the second note, we took out the third note. The next one is going to be taking out the fourth note. I'll just write it here and then we'll rewrite it as we go through the playing exercise. We go to the fourth variation, and I know this is a little crammed, but this is how this looks. If you look, we have 2 16th notes followed by an eighth note. And this is 1 E and. Now you can take the same exact philosophy behind all the rest of the concepts that are here. For example, we're still doing check pattern sticking, which if we remember is regardless of which note we take out, 1 and are right hands, E and are left hands. So if we take out an and count, we take out a right. If we take out an count, we take out a left. But if we take a look at the actual rhythm itself, it's a little bit simpler because we have the nice natural counts for each one of the notes. 1 is a 16th note, takes us to E. E is a 16th note, takes us to and is an eighth note, takes us to the next downbeat. In this case, it would be 2. We also take out the left hand on the count. All right, there we go. There we go. And these are the first 4 variations, and these are all of the 3-note variations that you can have. If you think about it, there's no other combination that you can have of 16th notes that would incorporate only 3 beats. So that's pretty cool. Let's write them out a little bit differently then. Hope everybody was taking notes. We got variation 1, variation 2, variation 3, and variation 4. Now, the way that this exercise is played, and again, it will consist of 14 different variations as we go through all the different 16th note patterns. We play this exercise, which is a very, very traditional check pattern exercise. And what we do is every time you see a group of 16th notes here, we substitute in whatever our variation might be. So the only thing that remains the same through the entire exercise is these groupings of eighth notes that are here and here and here and here and here and here and that quarter note there. Now the way that this all sounds, hopefully it's not too loud, and hopefully you guys can see all things in the, oh my God, I got too many cables. I need to go wireless, guys. That's what I need to do. Need to go wireless. All right, let's go back to main scene. Bada bing. All right, very good. Get a cup of coffee. All right. So how's everybody doing today? You guys doing good? Y'all getting this? It's all making sense? All right, let's choose a nice little sound here so we can get an example going for what this is. Sounds pretty good. All right, so if we go through the exercise, we play the entire way through this exercise as our check pattern. We have 1E and a 2 and 3E and a 4 and 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4 and 1E and a 2 and 3E and a 4 and 1E and a 2E and a 3. Except for that stick lick at the end. You tuned in a little late. All right. Well, this is the second lesson. This is not the first lesson of reading rhythm, so it's a little bit more advanced, but stick with me here. So that is our first variation as we go through the entire part of the exercise. What we're going to be doing is taking 1, 2, 3, and 4 and substituting all of those variations into all of these 16-note variations. So to give you an example, we'll play the check pattern itself, just the regular check pattern, and then we'll go into variation 1. And again, variation 1 is E and A, or E and A, left hand, left, right, left. Now I'll play the whole way through check pattern variation 1, and then check pattern, and then variation 1. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1E and a 2E, I'm sorry, I was thinking about the next one. 1E and a 2 and 3E and a 4 and 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4 and 1E and a 2 and 3E and a 4 and 1E and a 2E and a 3. Click. 1E and a 2 and E and a 4 and E and a E and a E and a 4 E and a 2 and E and a 4 and E and a E and a 3. Click. And then we can move on to variation 2 from that point. So basically what we're trying to do here is get a very good basic point of two things. Number one is understanding how to recognize and read the very common writings of all the different types of 16-note variations, but we're also getting used to what is check pattern sticking to give us a very, very consistent rhythmical pattern as we go through. Now here's one of the really cool things that happens, and this occurs quite a bit when we are using just the 3-note variations, because we're only going to be dropping out one of the hands. For example, we have 1E and A, and if we take variation 1, which we just did, we're taking out one of the right hands. Another way to look at it is to just like play it on your knee or something like 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4, if that makes sense. But what's cool is watch what the left hand does. Because we didn't take any left hands out, this can remain, and going back to another musical term, legato, or completely flowing the entire time, and it doesn't stop as we play through all of the 16-note variations. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a, you notice how it just keeps going? That's all of our E counts. Pretty sweet, right? So left hand can remain legato, and that actually helps us keep our time a little bit easier, which is one of the powers of utilizing check pattern stickings. Cool, so we go through and we can play all these different variations. We'll run through it pretty quick. Boop-bow. Version 2. Variation 3. Four. Nice, right? There's our first 4 variations, all of our 3-note patterns. There you go. Wonderful, wonderful exercise. And again, this is one of those things that we talk about. Let's talk about one little concept here. There is performance drumming, and then there is like, I'll split that up into 2 different things. There is what you work to become a performer and to become an artist, and there is what you work as to become a drummer. Meaning is, what do you do to train in order to get to be the player? Then versus what do you do to train to become an artist? Artist is more about interpretation of these rhythms and to make something that sounds musical and something that makes sense for the musical parts. However, as you're working your skills and working them up, you need to work all those individual components. And in this case, it's a wonderful, wonderful exercise to do the two things that I was talking about. Get used to the check pattern stickings to get a very consistent flow of all your 16th note variations, and to start getting your reading a little smoother and understanding what are the common ways that these variations are written. Number 3 being the toughest one. Number 3 being the toughest one. Oh, the microphone. Hold on a sec, guys. All right, guys, there we go. It is corded, so there is a small dilemma with that. No problemos, though. No problemos. All right, so moving on. This is our, let's go back to board cam. Board cam, so we can read all the things. Boink. All right, on to board cam, guys, on to board cam. How you guys liking it? Does it look good? Give me some feedback. Can you guys read this clearly on phones, tablets, TVs, and everything? Does it look clear? Can you see it? Hopefully it looks good. The live lesson, though, ladies and gentlemen, the live lesson. All right. Looks good? Excellent. That's very good to hear. All right. So here we go, guys. Moving on, this takes care of all of our 3-note variations. So we go to our 2-note variations, which we're going to be taking out 2 16th notes out of all of them. Now, how you do this, in what order you do it, it's a little less systematic. However, we'll just start with some of the basics. Let's start by doing the same sort of pattern by taking out the first 2 16th notes. So for our variation 5, we're going to be doing this, taking out the first 2 16th notes. So that's an 8th note rest followed by 2 16th notes. In chat, I'll give you a few moments. You can see it on your phone. That is perfect. That is great to hear. I'm going to write down some variations. Chat, your job is to tell me what are the counts. What are the counts for this? Test those reading skills. Then we're going to take out the second 2, or the last 2 16th notes. Then we're going to go variation 7, which way do we want to do this? Oh, cool. We have another part of a lesson we have not discussed yet, guys, but it's going to be fun. We'll do it this way first. We'll go that variation. That's also a tricky one, by the way. That's a tricky one. Number 8. Oh boy, this is the one we're going to have to talk about. That's what we're going to have to talk about because that's a new musical notation. We'll break that down just a little bit. And then number 9. Anybody got their counts? We'll do this one first. We'll do this one first. And then variation 10, which is this. All right. So as we go through all of these different variations, the first one, number 5, is an 8th note rest followed by 2 16th notes. And again, remember the rules, guys. How many flags are attached to that note stem? That's the important bit. How many flags are attached to that note's stem? Anybody know the counts? I'll wait for it. We have 2 16th notes followed by an 8th note over here. Now we have this variation, number 7, which we got to talk about just a little bit. This one is a 16th note rest followed by a 16th note and then followed by an 8th note. And again, we get right back to that same thing we just had in variation 3, which is there is a grouped up note. However, the flags do not touch all the notes inside the grouping. And that makes it a little bit difficult right there. Number 8, we got to have a little talk. Does anybody know what the dot is? There's a dot after this note. It's a very important musical notation because it's one of the things that we haven't really discussed yet. So let's talk about that just briefly. Do I have enough room on my board? Probably not, but we'll see what we can do here. Let's take away let's get our eraser here. Move it over this way. All right, we're going to talk about the dot in terms of reading because this is one thing that we do have to cover in order for everything to be understood and the concepts of said things. I'm just going to take out this is the left side of this, so we can kind of talk about what the dot means. In its basic term, what the dot means is we're going to be adding something to the note. Now, what we're going to be adding when you see a dot after a note is a little bit of length to it. Now, what that length is half of whatever the note it's behind. So in this example right here, we have a quarter note. If you remember back to our reading, we talk about a quarter note equals 2/8 notes, because we need to figure out, like, what is half of this? And remember this, guys, remember this. There's the whole pie. There's half the pie, also known as a half note. There is a quarter of the pie, and then we slice that again, we go, oh, that's 1/8 of the pie. We're going to be adding the quarter note plus half of a quarter note. Or another way to put it is 1/8 note. So the dot equals 1/8 note. So you have quarter note plus a dot equals what, because the quarter note itself equals 2/8 notes and the dot equals 1/8 note. Another way to look at this, and this has helped a lot of students in the past, is when you see a dot, the dot is the musical terminology of what incorporates how to make a note that takes up 3 spaces. That's what it is. Not a triplet, nothing crazy like that. Don't think triplets. If you've heard that term before, don't think triplets. It takes 3 spaces. That's the important bit. So the dot equals half of the note that's in front of it. Or another way to look at it is when you see a note with a dot that takes up 3 of half of whatever that is. All right, so here we go. Let's apply that knowledge down here. Down here we have number 8. Number 8, the application of knowledge is as follows. We have a 8th note with a dot. Now if we look at that, I remember from my few violin lessons that I had, did you remember the dot? All right, so here, check this out. We have an 8th note with a dot. Now we ask ourselves, a dot equals what? We're adding something to this note. What are we adding to it? We're adding half of the value of that note. In this case, it's an 8th note. Okay, we got to figure out what's half an 8th note. Remember slices of the pie, guys. If you cut 1/8 of a pie in half, how much do you have? Also, it's fractions, if that makes sense as well. If that makes more sense to do it math-wise, that also works. Or we could say, okay, so that equals 3 of half of the note that it's behind. Half of this note is a 16th note, so this is going to take up 3 16th note counts. So this is going to start on count 1. It's going to take up, remember, it takes up the note that it's on plus 2 more. So E and. It takes up all 3 of those counts. And that is a good thing to remember, because that one has always been something that's been confusing too. When I have the dot, do I do 3 more counts after the note? Or do I include the note that it's on? The answer is you always include the note that it's on as well. So this whole thing takes up 3 counts. So there you go. That takes up 1 E and. And that puts us on the And the we have a 16th note because it's got 1 staff with 1 flag on it. Then we got little funky variation number 9. Number 9. Funky variation 9. We have ourselves a 16th note rest. Remember when it comes down to the rest, the 8th note rest, it's all of our rests beyond the quarter note, we'll say. If we have an 8th note and we take a mirrored image of it like this, but we ignore the note head. We take the note head out. We don't have that. And then we kind of make it, just shift it around a little bit like that. But remember that this is still 1 stem with 1 flag to it. A 16th note would be the same thing with 2 flags. And as a shorthand, you'll see it a lot like this. Looks like a crazy number 7. You'll see it like that, like a shorthand for it. But it's still 1 staff with 2 flags on it. So we have a 16th note rest on count 1. That moves us 1 16th note count, or to the E count. On the E count, we have an and, or I'm sorry, we have a, on the E count, well, not an and count, but we have an 8th note on the E count. And now we have to start thinking about that crazy stuff of how much space does this take up. But if we remember back to variation 3, it's kind of the point of this exercise, by the way. You go, oh, I've seen this before. Kind of cool, right? So if we go to that variation, we have an 8th note on the E count. We know that it takes up 2 16th note counts. Those 2 16th note counts are E and. That brings us to our count. we good to go. Variation 10 is pretty simple because if we take the second and the fourth 16th note out, it leaves us with 8 notes. However, this is the one variation that I want to talk about because this one is actually played incorrectly quite often. Let me write our exercise back up here. Now that we have those explanation points completed. By the way, guys, you start listening to this and you'll start hearing, let me see if I can find this. You'll start hearing it in songs, which is the funny part. Let me see if I can find something for you guys. I hope this isn't like, I will say this, Chrome is probably the worst application for this computer. It uses so much stuff. All right, let's see here. So I can find the one. Is it this one? Nope. This one perhaps? It's loading, guys. Hang on. gotta give it a minute. You gotta give it a minute. Check this out. Does that variation sound similar to something else? Check pattern. Jamming, dude. Start hearing these variations in a lot of songs. So there you go. Perfect example of musical application of these exercises, guys. That's how it all breaks down. That's how it all breaks down. And that's why it's important. What's that, all the other stuff that you played? Just 16 variations. Nothing too crazy. Nothing too crazy. All right, back to chat and all that kind of stuff. You like it, Code Reap? You digging it? All right, get a sip of coffee and we're going to get through our rest of our variations. And we're going to talk a little briefly about variation 10 because that one gets played incorrectly quite often. All right, dudes. Oh, I keep doing that. I'm stepping on the cord. Hold on a sec. There we go. Cool. The corded lapel mic is nice. Oops, that's the wrong one. Corded lapel mic is nice, but yeah, it has a few things I got to work with. All right, good. All right, dudes. So back to our variation here, and let's think about how variation 10 works out. Because remember, again, we're doing our check pattern stickings. Check pattern stickings. Isn't it weird? It's literally the variation. Now remember how we apply this exercise. One thing I did forget to mention is that these eighth notes, when it comes down to checking pattern sticking, check pattern sticking is every 16th note variation has right, left, right, left. But when we play the eighth notes, if we would use check pattern sticking on eighth notes, just I'll write it over here briefly, the check pattern sticking will be right, left, right, left. Now we have to remember back to our rules. Riz, what up, dude? Whoop, whoop. It's the sound of the drums. Oh, hell yeah, dude. And we're doing a little bit of lesson today. Check pattern sticking for 16 notes, right, left, right, left. Check pattern sticking for, if it's eighth notes, is right, left, right, left. So what that means is as we play through this exercise, our sticking for our eighth notes, wow, that one was not quite connected all the way, is right, left, right, left, right, left. Because that's our check pattern sticking for eighth notes. However, because we're using the rules of when we take a note out, we also take out that hand, variation 10 is not going to be right, left, although it's just eighth notes. Because we're using it as a 16th note variation pattern and as an exercise, this becomes right, right. And the reason being is we're taking out that left hand and we're taking out that left hand. And that's the rule for check pattern sticking. Again, this is an exercise. These are training elements to get you to be the player. These are the tools that are necessary to get to that point where you become the artist, application of said knowledge. But to get to the point of, through the playing aspects, to become a good artist, you need to have the skills and the tools necessary to do so. This is a almost crucial exercise. And by the way, this is not exclusive to drums either. These are all instruments should be able to do and understand these rhythms of 16th note variations. Now, back to our variation 10. And the reason I mentioned this particular one is because now that we play through this exercise, we don't have any more 16th notes, really. It's just all eighth notes. However, our sticking's a little weird. We're gonna go right, 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 left, right, 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 left, right, 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 left. Pretty wild, right? So you're doing all this crazy stuff, but you're not doing a ton of different or you're not doing a ton of 16 notes. In fact, you're not doing any, but because of our check pattern variation rules, it makes it sticking a little bit strange. All right, so we got all of that bit covered. Now we have only 4 more variations. I did not mention these. I was giving you guys the opportunity, but here are our counts. Our counts are going to be as follows. And 1 E, and then E and. Yo, this variation right here, boop, boop, number 7. Check this out, guys. This is like funk at its finest. The E and on the kick drum. Welcome to Sidetrackville. You guys ready for Sidetrackville? Let's do it. All right. So if we take our standard drum beat of like eighth notes here on the hi-hat, 2 and 4 on the snare. Easy peasy, nice and easy. We start taking this E and variation, throwing it down on the E and of 3. Get that little funky beat, man. Wait, sorry that I do not participate too actively working while watching. Dude, I completely understand. A lot of people are sitting there chilling and watching. It's all good. So we take our standard beat and we'll take 1 and 3 on the kick. Now I'm going to change that up to making, instead of it on 3, it's going to be on the and of 3. 1, 2, and 4. Now instead of just the and, I'm going to put the E and to make it funky. It's an easy one to mess up because it's a kind of a naked E. The naked E is always tough. Hiatus, but there's an example of 16th note variations. Funk it up, dudes. All right, back to it. Let's see if I can get out of the drum stool this time without stepping on my lapel mic cord. Beautiful. You know, we're gonna have to do something about on the stream here. Hi, I just stumbled here and I love it. Well, welcome into the stream. Welcome into the stream. God Kaiser, what's going on, man? Music lessons, guys. Music lessons. We're doing our 16th note variations. Just kind of giving a little bit of things that you can do to practice, and this is not just for drums, but this could be for any instrument altogether. We have 4 more variations to do, and then I'll go through and I'll play all of the different exercises of our check patterns with our check pattern stickings at slow tempos, medium tempos, and, well, possibly a little bit faster as well. Let's get back to board cam. We only have 4 more variations to do. And the board cam, all right, 4 more variations. We've done all of our 3-note variations, and that's what these are here. Row number 1 is all of our 3-note variation, 3 notes. I just said 3N, but that's just, you know, I think you get the idea. You're having flashbacks to high school, are you? Well, good. That means I'm doing a good job. They usually pay those teachers, yeah? All right. And then all of these other variations here, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 variations, are all of our 2-note variations that we can do as we play through all the parts. These are all of our 2-note variations, which leaves us with only, some money. Yeah, exactly. Leaves us with our 1-note variations. So you can almost think about it as it's exactly the opposite of what happened over here in our first 4 variations. So we're going to do the same thing. And except in this case, we're going to not start with taking out the last 3. We're going to start by taking out, I'll show you. Variation number 11. And this is going to be a little tight here. As you see, I'm kind of running out of board space. Maybe I can like rearrange just a little bit. Anyway, we are going to do the E count. And this one, again, is a little bit tricky, guys. This is probably the trickiest one to look at and to read. You have a 16th note rest, followed by a dotted 8th note. Now back to what we just did in terms of the lesson. What does a dot equal? It's adding half of the note before it. Or it's 3 of half of that note. In this case, 3 16th notes. So that's our E count. Ooh, board space is getting very tight. It's going to get very, very tight over here, guys. Then we're going to do our and count. Boink. 8th note rest followed by 8th note. Variation 13, the count. And here comes the nice little trick right there. Actually, I'm going to write this up as an example over here. We have a this plus that. Now check this one out, right? Ooh, 16th note rest. No, funky 16th note rest. We have a dotted 8th note rest. So that's an important thing to remember. The dot is not something that's exclusive to a note and a note head. You can also apply that same concept to rest as well. Remember that the dot is what the musical notation terminology is to equal 3 of something. It's always going to be half. It's adding half of the note before it. Adding half. Remember that. Adding half. So in this particular case, which is very small down here, variation 13, is a dotted 8th note rest followed by a 16th note. Or we could look at it this way. All right, we have an 8th note rest. All right, so let's think about that. Okay, 8th note rest. That takes up count 1. That takes us to count and. But we're adding something to it. And then we're adding half of that. Okay, what's half of an 8th note rest? Just remember, if you ever have that question in your head, what is half of it? Think back to your pizza pie. If you have an 8th note of the pie, or an 1/8 of the pie, and you cut it in half, how much of the pie do you have left? Welcome to math class, right? But it's a 16th note. Fractions, my friends, fractions. So we're adding a 16th note to the rest, which means space for the rest. Or another way to put it is this ends up on the count for variation 13. And then for our final variation, number 14, it is the simplest of all. We're going right back to quarter note, just on count 1. And those are 14. And it is Pi Day. You're right. 3.14. That's perfect. Intriguing. Intriguing indeed. There are 14 variations. Now, here's the cool thing about how systematically you do these exercises, and that's why this is a systematic exercise. If you guys are serious about practicing and serious about like wanting to work this, I already have this written up in Sibelius as an exercise, so you can have it to print out. It's in a PDF form. But you guys let me know. Tweet me at Professor Woodshed. Be like, please give me that PDF. I really want to see it. Oh, it's just it's Pi Day. Well, buy some pie. That's true. That's true. All right. But cool. As we go through this exercise and as we go through it systematically, we have covered every single possibility combination of what these 4 16 notes can do in a single beat. There are only 14 different variations. As soon as we add another beat to it, if it was 2 beats long, well, we have a lot more different variations that we can put in there. So these are all of our variations. I'll play through the exercise one time on its entirety, all the way through, so you guys get a feel. Remember how this exercise works. This is our check pattern exercise, and what we're doing is we're substituting in every 16th note grouping with one of the variations, and we go through all the way to the very, very end. And the other things to remember is that stickings, for check pattern stickings, are the hand that plays the note is hard bound to that note. So if we take out the 1 count, that also takes out a right hand. If we take out an E count, that also takes out a left hand. So we're doing a lot of what's called check pattern stickings versus alternating stickings, which is always going to be right, left, regardless of what rhythm you're playing. These are check pattern stickings. E and 1 and 1 E 1 E and 1 E and 1 E 1 and E and 1. They're all our variations. Are you guys ready? I'm gonna get some coffee and play the whole way through. You know what's a really cool thing too? And this is I mean, you could put a metronome on. A metronome is good. Consistent beat is always good. If you notice right now, I'm just kind of giving like a kick. Let me go ahead and do this to the main scene here. Boop. All right, I'm giving it just like a kick, just so you have like 1, 2, 3, 4 as you go through all the different parts. But you know what's kind of cool that you can do? You can actually go and play along to a track. So instead of it just being like beep, 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 beep. Good focus, good things, but you can play to the Flintstones. You can watch some cartoons, watch some animes or something like that, and just play along to it. Or you can play along to some like Super Hexagon or something like that. You know, a little bit of this. You'd be like, let's see if we can do this exercise through this. All the way through Super Hexagon. You guys ready? Let's try it, guys. I want to get back on the 4. Variation 2. Ba, ba, da, ba, ba. That's pretty quick. Variation 4. Five. Variation 6. Variation 8. Variation 9. Let's try that again. Keep going. We're almost done with the variations. I think it's this one right here. All right, we're on variation 12. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we're on to variation 13. 1, a 2, and a 4, and a 4, and 1, a 2, and 3, a 4, and 1, a 2, a 3. Last variation. Quarter, eighth note, quarters, eighth notes, quarter, 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 eighth note, quarter, eighth note, quarter, eighth note, quarter, quarter, quarter. Double time. Here we go. 3, 4. Woo-hoo, that's a little speedy. But that's super fun, guys. And so one of the things that is like totally fun to do is if you have a little portion that you would like to maybe play along to a track, use that as your metronome. A lot of times, especially like in electronic tracks, you'll get that sort of thing where you have a consistent beat. You can play along to it, and it makes it a little bit more fun to jam along to whatever track it might be. That is 16 note variations. And remember, guys, tweet me out. Oh my God, Pi. It is Pi Day, guys, and cheers. I hope you guys enjoyed that somewhat lax performance of an exercise, but I want to talk about application and what this is all about. This is basic concepts of getting your reading skills up, recognizing each individual pattern, so when you see it in music, you understand how to recognize it, so you're not constantly doing that thing where I break it down so you get an understanding of it, but you don't want to have to do that every time you get to a piece of music. You want to be like, oh, I've seen that pattern before. I recognize it. You can almost think about it as this is your very, very basic times tables for music, for reading music. These are your very, very basic ones. Yeah, that's that. That's a very good way to put it. Now, this is just the exercise. And again, this is about training the player. And I want you to understand the concept. This is not like, oh, if you want to go up to your next drum gig, man, just play check pattern sticking all day long for every song and it's going to sound amazing. Nah, not really, dude. Not really. That's not going to make for, good drum beats or whatever, like, all right, cool, man. What are we playing? Oh, Ain't No Sunshine When She's Gone? All right, very cool. Ain't no sunshine when she's... Doesn't quite work. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't quite have the same effect as like playing the song. And then, but this is a practice room exercise. This is a woodshed exercise, guys. Something that you do in the practice room to get your musical skills up, to recognize the patterns, to start to work with that and get good variation in concepts for all the different points. Cool. Now I want to talk about a little bit of taking this concept and moving it a little bit forward. Before I move on though, if you guys have any questions, tweet them at me. I'll be happy to answer them. And also guys, if you have not done so already, we do have a Discord, which we're starting to build that up. We're starting to build that up, see what we can get in terms of just drum talk, random talk, whatever people want to do. So if we want to do bang Discord and chat, that'd be fantastic, guys. Get over on the Discord. Over on the Discord. Fire in the Taco Bell. All right, let's take a little bit higher application to this. And this is going to be what I would call reading 204. I'm just randomly assigning numbers to the courses now. Classic teacher. Where did I put my eraser and my writing utensils, right? Classic teacher. We're going to have to do something on the stream. We're going to say, how many times can the prof wrap his lapel mic cord around the drum stool? That's going to be the thing. It's been twice so far. Thank you very much, Ariana. Really appreciate it. And happy Pi Day, everybody. Happy Pi Day. That's the 16 note variations. If you want a copy of this exercise, I have a PDF. I'll be happy to do it if you tweet them at me. At Professor Woodshed on the Twitters. I will be happy to provide that for you. 16 note variations. Now we're going to go reading. We'll call that 204 because I just assign random numbers to it. Reading notes 204, guys. Reading notes 204. Y'all ready for this? What we're going to be doing is we're taking an application of knowledge of what we just learned was all our 16-note variations and how to read that. And again, most of the time when you have these variations, you don't have them based on single beat combinations. You have them as a conglomerate of a bunch of stuff. I'm going to talk about 3 basic rhythms, and these are really, really high application rhythms. Number 1 is what I like to call the guitarist groove. I could point out thousands of songs that utilize just this. Why don't you feed it through your shirt and clip it to your back? Oh, you mean like doing this way? I could. I mean, I'm new to it too. I have any suggestions for that. This one I'm going to call the guitarist groove. Every single time a guitarist goes, I'm going to make this beat funky, right? This is the rhythm that they play. Are you guys ready for this? You ready for the big secrets? And guitar players out there, if you're a guitar player, you're going to be like, yeah, we do that a lot. All right, the guitar player's groove takes those 16-note variations that we just talked about, and remember, everything we do here is going to fall into one of those 14 variations. Welcome to Guitar Player Groove Central. Rhythm number 1. Anybody got the counts for it? Also one of the most misplayed rhythms in the world too. This one's played incorrectly quite a bit. There is our first rhythm. Anybody know the counts? I'll work on the second one, which, and a lot of times they call this rock and roll. Rock and roll. A lot of times you'll hear that, but it's just a groove. There's that one. Very cool. And then, so that's guitar players. This is the guitar player's groove. And the third one I want to talk about is a variation on the first one, but the same thing. And I'll talk about the concepts that are here too. I'm trying to think if this is too advanced for this moment. You know what? I'm going to write it down. And then we'll go with it. We'll roll with it, guys. We will roll with it. All right, cool. Ah, crap. Raj, the prof wrote something difficult on the board, didn't he? Uh-oh. What are we going to do now? That song's in my head now. All right, cool. Anybody know the counts? Let's talk about the first one, guitar player groove. It's this is a groove that gets played very frequently because it's a very easy thing to feel over top of a downbeat. This is also known as every third 16th note. I could extend this. We're going to take the basic concept of reading, and then we're going to take it just a little bit farther in application of knowledge. Here's what we'll talk about. When it comes down to drumming in general, and a lot of times it's about pattern recognition. It's understanding like, okay, this is the pattern, and we repeat this pattern, or we play this ostinato, or we play these different parts. However, sometimes it's tough to recognize it, and I've talked about this before. Don't let, especially as a drum set player, as an artist aspect, don't always let what you see on the page dictate what you play all the time. We'll roll with it, just not rock and roll with that third one, because rock and roll is the second one. It's true. That's true. All right, here we go. First one is going to be 1 and 3 and. Dude, all over the place, man. The guitarist groove. All the time, man. All the time. Cool thing about this is that once you learn this rhythm and understand what the pattern is, you'll find this pattern all over the place, all over in music. What this pattern is this is every third 16th note. So if we stop thinking about what notes we play and start thinking about the notes that we don't play in this rhythm, in this case, we don't play the E and we don't play the and. We don't play the 2, we don't play the E. All right, so there's a 2 space there, there's a 2 space there. And then we have a 1 gap here. All right, so there's the application. We have our strong beat of 1, and we'll get to a whole lesson on all of that stuff too. And our strong beat of 3, so we have a half bar repeating pattern that occurs all the time. The guitarist groove, my friends, the guitarist groove. And if guitarists are honest, they'll be like, yeah, that's in a lot of songs. All the time. All right, but this is every third 16th note groove. So that's the first one. I'll play it for you briefly, just as a rhythm itself, and then I'll apply a few other things to it as well. All right, y'all ready? Y'all ready? Yo, give me a downbeat, man. All right, we got this. Cool. The first thing that's up on the board. Let's go ahead and switch over to scene so you can see me actually play the drums. 1, 2, 3, 4. Bum, 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 bum. Reverse it. All right, and that's a guitar player's groove. Simple fills, simple beats. The guitarist player's groove, the guitar player's groove, that's number 1. You'll hear that in a ton of different songs, and it's pretty cool. Now, if we take that application and we utilize that in maybe a different way, and we're gonna briefly touch on a few different concepts here. Let's talk about phrasing. If I say phrasing, phrasing is a good way to describe that is like, how long is it before the pattern repeats? How long is it before the pattern happens again? And if you notice, this pattern is every third 16th note, skip 1 16th note, and then play the same thing again. So you could pretty much say that this is a 2-beat phrase that repeats over and over. And we could say, well, what if we want to do a 4-beat phrase? All right, so this is where the application of like recognizing the patterns and applying some different things. All right, so that's a 2-beat phrase of the guitarist groove. It's my turn, by the way. I coined that. That's the guitarist groove rhythm. But let's take that application and let's say, all right, instead of it stopping on the 2-beat, how about we extend that all the way to 4 beats long? Okay, well, if I would take that same pattern and say, all right, how about we skip 2 more 16th notes? Think about what those 2 16th notes will be skipped. We're just going to skip the we're going to skip the 3. Oh no, then it's going to get weird. Yes, it is. Then we have this guy. Oh, then we have this guy. And then we have this guy. Oh, all right, well, there's the application, but now we're actually doing a full skip of all the different 16th notes and have extended that concept into a 4-beat phrase. Oh yeah? Very nice, very nice. All right, so we're taking that same concept and we're skipping the we're skipping the 3, we're playing the E. I'll try to make these bigger so it makes a little bit more sense. 1 I'm hoping that this scene shows this off pretty well. Then we're going to skip the E and so we're skipping those 2 beats. We're going to play the 4, we're going to skip the E and then we're going to play the Now here comes a very interesting concept. Are you guys ready for this? Guitarist groove could easily turn into guitarist rut if overdone. You'll hear it a lot. It's the guitarist groove. And it's super funny. There's been multiple guitar players in multiple bands and multiple times that I'll say, can you add a little bit of funk to that? Can you give it a little bit of groove? There you go. Every third 16th note. So take a look at this. It's all about pattern recognition, guys. It's all about the pattern recognition. We're doing a skipping of every third 16th note. And as we start to build this whole thing together, I know there's a lot of stuff under here. These are just counts, by the way. This is not like, this is just reference points that are underneath. But if I erase those for a second and erase all this stuff, because this is really not important, that's just telling us what we're skipping. Those are the counts that we're playing. You start to see this pattern of how things are written. Okay, I noticed that we play this, but the first and the fourth beat happen to be written the same way. Okay, so for this, as a repeating pattern, it's a 4-beat phrase, but it sort of repeats itself every 3 beats. Interesting. Remember that, guys, because that's a very important pattern recognition to start to work on with drums. There's two different things. There's two different sort of schools of thought when it comes down to learning to play. There's what I call karaoke playing. Yes, I know, guys. Yes, I know the word and the terms. And what I mean by karaoke playing is that you treat it like the bouncing ball, all right? Like if you have karaoke, and I'm talking about the old school karaoke that has like the ball that actually bounces on the words. If you guys know what I'm talking about, it bounces on the words. So, and what I mean by that is you play to this. You're like, I play that note, then that note, then that note, then that note, then that one, then that one, then that one, then that one, then that one. Guess what that does for your rhythms? It makes everything choppy. It doesn't give you any frame of reference. It doesn't prepare you for what's coming next. It doesn't do all those things. Versus, and that's what I call karaoke playing because you're just focusing on the note of what you're doing every single time. Versus pattern recognition and trying to identify where the patterns repeat, where the flow of the pattern is, where there is some space to maybe put some extra stuff in, or space that you need to leave for something else to happen there. A vocal part, a guitar part, a sax part, whatever that might be. So here's the deal. Here you go. Pattern recognition, not karaoke playing. Recognize the pattern that this is seeing it, and I'm telling you what it is now, but it's about starting to look at it and understand those concepts so you know when things repeat, so you can start thinking about things a little bit easier. All right, we have 1 and E, 4 the whole pattern repeats on the 4 after 3 beats, but it is a 4-note phrase. So we've extended the phrase from 2 beats to 4 beats. Back to the drum set for application. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and E, 4 1. That's the 4-beat phrase. But if I would extend this even further past the 4-beat and repeat this again, this is where it becomes interesting, guys. Does anybody know how many measures I would have to play of this pattern? If I would take the same concept and repeat it, skipping every 3rd, 16th note before I come back to this particular one. 2, 3, 4. 1 and E, 4 and E, 3 and E. Did we all figure it out? 1, 2, 3, 4. But again, you get this groove that's happening there, and that's why it gets played on guitars a lot, because it's a consistent ostinato that gets played on the guitar quite a bit, and it makes it easier because it's good for hand strokes and everything on the guitar. It makes a lot of sense, but it gets played quite a bit. But you start to get this groove, and you start to, as I play it, and there's probably many of you that are just listening to it going, I wasn't sure if this is the downbeat or if that's the downbeat. I'm not really sure, like which one was the downbeat. How many of you guys have heard like this is like 1, 2, 3, and 4 versus that? And that brings up a very interesting point about those hemiola patterns. That's a term that we'll get into in a much more crazy thing. But there's 2 patterns that are perfectly consistent as they get played through both parts, and you can sort of identify as you listen to it as that's the downbeat or that's the downbeat. It could be one or the other. It could be both. It could be, okay, cool. As a drummer, you could play on that fact quite a bit and kind of mess with people's minds quite, just a little bit. Bump, 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 bump. Bump, 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 bump. Also a very common tempo shift as well. Yeah. All right, so that's a guitar player's rhythm. If you guys haven't figured it out yet, it's 3 measures of this pattern to get back to the 1 again. So it's 3 bars long. It's a lot of what we would call 3/4 kind of feel. All right, next one up is rock and roll. rock and roll. Again, pattern recognition as we do this. Now this starts to get a little bit more complex, and this is a lot of application of the 16-note variations of which we discussed before. But the rock and roll, we're doing patterns of 2. We're doing 2-note patterns all the way through this. Now there's a lot of complex rhythms here. You can go through and break it down, but if you work through those exercises, you start to see like, okay, I've seen all this before. Our counts here are 1. Oh, wow. Okay, I write a 1 with like an L. No. 1 E, 2 and E and 4 and. There you guys go. This one is a rock and roll, man. Rock and roll. You'll hear this one very commonly in a bunch of songs, but this is our downbeat. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 E, a 2 and E and 4 and. Bop, 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 bop. Have you heard that drum fill before? Has anybody heard that one before? Yeah, maybe in a song. Yeah. Maybe in a particular song somewhere. That may happen. That's known as rock and roll, guys. It's a really good exercise. You can start to work it on like this rhythm as different diddle exercises. You could extend this. It doesn't have to end on 4 and. You could play different variations on it. It's in some Phil Collins song, I guess, right? Yeah. Craziness there, craziness. Okay, now the next thing I have up is this particular bit here. And I talked about this being maybe a little bit more advanced than what I wanted to talk, what we were getting into today. However, what this is an inverse of the very first one. So instead of, it's a shift of the same concept. This happens quite a bit, and you can get some very, very interesting things and different sounds and different pretty cool beats when you do that. Oh yes, guitar knots for the first. Oh, garlic knots. I gotta get like big man font. I'm trying to read chat from across the room. This is the exact same concept as the first one. It's every third 16th note, but we're doing it as a shift. And utilizing it as a shift is a very interesting musical concept because you start getting into this sort of call and response. And a lot of times what you can do is instead of playing like particularly exactly what the vocals might be playing or exactly what the guitar might be playing, you could play the same feel but off of its rhythm. And for this example, you'll be like bump, ba-dump, 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 bump. You'll get this really, really cool like kind of counterpoint that occurs, but it's still the same concept. We're just shifting it around a little bit. We do skip to the first 8th note count of and, but then from that point on, we're doing our every third 16th note. We do and, E, 3 and. Remember what beat you're on, it's important. 3 and E, all right. So if you take a look at this, you could sort of start to see this pattern occur. If I put this 3 back in here, you'll definitely see the 3 and happening, the and 3 right here. It's basically shifting it over by 1. If you put those two rhythms together, it's pretty good. It works out pretty well as those things, as like a call and response. So instead of it being just a very, very simple, I'm playing what the guitar player's playing, remember it's about recognition, recognizing those patterns. So instead of it being just like 1, a 2 and 3, a 4 and 1, a 2 and 3, 4 and 1 and. And because we're taking the same concept, and this is application of knowledge again, guys, taking the same concept of what the guitar rhythm is, and we're starting to play off that a little bit, you get these super groovy things. So it's about using your ears, pattern recognition, and then understanding the concepts of reading, which is why this is the more advanced, but how do you use all these 16th note variations? Here's a great example of that. And this is the second part of the lesson, and I do want to start to break these parts down into what does it take to be a player. To be a player, you need to train your skills. You need to work on technique. You need to work on your reading skills. You need to work on your sticking skills. You got to work on your chops. You got to make sure that you got all the things that are necessary to be a player. That's the first thing. To be an artist, working on being an artist is application of all of those skills. This is starting to get to that lesson point of how to take those skills and apply it to an artistic point of view. I've recognized this pattern. I can hear the pattern. This is what the guitar player is doing. 1, 2, and 3. Cool, that's that 16th note groove that we talked about. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that every third 16th note thing. All right, yeah. And you put that against that guitar player groove, and I guarantee you, it's going to give this like crazy counterpoint, but it fits perfectly with what's going on because of that shift. Another cool variations that we can do with shifting is just getting different stickings and things, but we'll get into that exercise a little bit later with like. Different shifts are pretty cool. Yeah, dudes. Yeah, dudes. Application of 16th note variations and knowledge, and taking it from the standpoint of what do you do in the practice room, how to practice it, tips to practice it. Why don't you do it with a song? Use the song as your metronome. Have some fun with it. And then start to take that and put more variations to it, and these very, very common beats, by the way. Yeah. All right, very good, very good. All right, guys, I think I have to do a couple things today. I hope you guys enjoyed the lesson, a little bit of Professor Woodshed. We're going to be doing this again on Friday, which I think I'm going to be doing a little bit more on the drum kit here, working on a few things with beats. We did a little bit today, a little bit examples and application of all of these things. Once again, if you guys do want a copy of this exercise, tweet me at Professor Woodshed. I'll be happy to provide a PDF for you guys so you can practice if you want to get your 16th note variations and all of your check pattern stuff going. But working on a few different beats and just some concepts on the basic kit that we have here within our limited bounds. I will say one thing, guys. Remember this, that I have a kick drum trigger right here that's attached to the rim, and it is extremely sensitive. I can touch the bass drum rim and get a bass drum sound. I can literally almost hit the floor. You can see my foot. I'm hitting the back of the pedal. Did you see this beater move at all? No, it didn't move. So you get a lot of phantom kicks. All right, but that's just why we're starting to save up for that TD30, guys. That's why one of the big reasons for that. But we'll start talking about beats. We're going to be doing that on Friday. We'll have a little bit longer of a stream then too. Probably play along to some songs as well, just kind of jamming out, doing a few things with that. Should be very fun. But guys, if you are brand new to the channel, I encourage you to slap that follow button. It helps me out a great deal. Easily triggered? I would say yes. I would say, yeah, pretty easily triggered. That's the 16 note variations. Remember to follow at Professor Woodshed on Twitter and tweet me if you guys want copies of that exercises. Guys, it has been a fantastic live lesson today. I hope you guys learned a little something. Even if you're not here, if you're just here for the curiosity, maybe you learned a little something, and next time you listen to a song, you go, I now hear that thing. I now heard this thing. My drum is easily triggered. That's true. Thank you guys so much for joining me once again. You guys have been a fantastic audience. We will catch you tonight over on the Wheel Playcast broadcast. I don't think I have a shout out here, but guys, thanks very much for joining me. You guys have been a fantastic audience. I hope you learned a little something. Apply it, listen to it, or just be curious about it. It's all good things, guys. Thank you so much again for joining me. And guys, have a great rest of your afternoon, and we'll catch you tonight. No problem, man. I will hope to see you again soon. Bye, everybody. You have a great one, dudes. Later.